So what's the main function of the endocrine system? When you think endocrine, you should think hormones. So that is the main function of the endocrine system. It revolves around hormones. Now, what about hormones? Well, it controls the production of hormones, like making these hormones, but not only making hormones, but controlling when to make it, how much to make of it, and how much to adjust the levels of these hormones. And also not just making hormones, but having the effects of these hormones regulate the body. If you remember all the way from last semester, there's an important concept called homeostasis. These are the ideal conditions of your body that it tries to maintain to keep your cells, tissues, organs, and your whole self alive. So your hormones are very important in that homeostasis. Hormones in general, very broadly, these are chemical messengers and they are carried via the blood in your body. So the bloodstream, that's referring to the flow of blood in your body, and hormones, this is the primary way it's transported. It's via blood. Now, this is back to this picture. So this is the picture in the Martini version of the book, and I think the OpenStax version is very similar. It shows these organs, but it says this is the endocrine system. And why do I not like this? Thing is that if we showed every organ or tissue that produced hormones in the body, you would have a lot more, and it would pretty much be almost all the organs and tissues in the body. So if you're talking about all the organs and tissues that make hormones, well, what are we seeing here? These are the organs that are one of their main functions is just making hormones. But that's also slightly misleading because the kidneys, well, they help make urine. The pancreas is also important in digestion. That's why I don't really like this image. It's kind of misleading. Pretty much almost all of the tissues and organs in your body, they make a hormone of some sort. Now here's the organs and tissues of the endocrine system. And this is a little more complete, not all of it, but it shows more of these organs and tissues. So we have our hypothalamus, our pituitary gland, which we touched upon last semester but didn't talk about in detail. This semester, this chapter, we talk about the pituitary gland in detail. And then you have your pineal gland, your thyroid gland, your parathyroid gland. Now, these are not the same. These are two different types of glands. They're located on each other, but they don't make the same type of hormones. These hormones do not have the same type of effects. But we have a whole lecture on that too. You have your adrenal gland that sits on top of your kidneys, and then your pancreas as well. But why did I highlight these first? So these are what you call primary endocrine functions. So for these tissues and organs, their main function is to make a hormone. Now, so the thing is that pancreas is kind of like, it's funny too, because it's also important in digestive functions, but that's for Unit 3. Now, secondary endocrine functions refers to all these organs and tissues that can make a hormone of some sort, but that's not their main function. So things like your heart, well, what's your heart's primary function? It's to beat and pump blood, right? So, but things that your heart also makes hormones, so it is an endocrine organ. You have your thymus, which is important in your immune system, but it also makes hormones as well. Your stomach and intestines and your digestive system, it makes hormones as well, but its main function is to digest. And then your kidneys' main function is to make urine, and then testes in the male and ovaries in the female. Now, they're considered, I think Martini considers them secondary. Now, it's kind of like, yeah, they're important in reproduction, but do you use these organs to reproduce every single time? Like, are the hormones produced by the testosterone in men and estrogen, progesterone in women, are they not important? They're pretty important to our everyday function and health. That's why I think a case could be made for the testes and ovaries being primary endocrine organs because they make these sex hormones that are very important to our everyday life. But okay, so this is another thing. Whenever I strongly disagree or there's a big contention between a topic in like the current medical or scientific field, I do not test you on that, but I make you aware of it. And this is one of the things, that's why I put the asterisk. Am I going to ask you whether the testes or ovaries are primary or endocrine organs or secondary? I will not ask you on that because I kind of disagree with the classifications. I think it's kind of like, there's a case for both. If you ask me, I think it's more of a primary because again, sex hormones are important, but that's kind of my editorializing. Right? And then adipose. So the adipose is a medical term for fat. So fat is more than just storing nutrients and excess calories. It's actually a very important endocrine organ as well. It's more than just part of your skin. And speaking of that, your skin is also part of also makes hormones as well. And something that's missing and something that's, I think, overlooked and probably the most, I would say, like underdog and overlooked of the organs in this whole textbook is your liver. Your liver does so much for your body. I mean, if you have liver failure, all the rest of your organs are going to shut down eventually if you don't get a transplant. But yeah, the thing is that all of these we cover more in detail, but what I'm getting at here, many organs, many tissues in your body, they produce some sort of hormone. I think lungs I don't know if they actually make their own hormone or a specialized hormone. I don't think they found it yet, but who knows, this might change. And let's see, and integument, skin, yeah, so all of these were covered. We will cover all of these, but when we're talking about the skin, that's something we covered last semester. All right, so then and speaking of the difference between the books, so if you remember we were here last semester, so things got a little random and a little disorganized between the Martini and OpenStax version. The good thing about this semester is that it's almost one-to-one. Maybe different sections are different within a chapter, but chapter 18 in Martini is chapter 17 in OpenStax, and chapter 19 in Martini is almost equivalent to chapter 18. So basically, if you're converting between the two books, if you're going from Martini to OpenStax, just subtract a number from the chapter. If you're going from OpenStax to Martini, just add a number. So I think last semester, the nervous system is where it got a little weird because OpenStax, I think they actually followed Martini's and they decided to shuffle it and put some neurological exam. It was kind of a mess for OpenStax. That's my big beef with that. But luckily, we don't have that shuffling this semester in 142 as much. All right, so endocrine versus exocrine secretion. So both involve glands. So there are endocrine glands, there are exocrine glands. So when you have something, let's knock off exocrine. We talked about exocrine glands, but we did talk about it last semester when we talked about things like sweat glands, sebaceous glands, merocrine glands, all those skin glands on the outer surface of our body. But it also involves things that are on the inside of our body. But what happens here is that exo refers to outside or the outer thing. So when you see this sort of prefix, and if you were here last semester, you know I really love prefixes, but why? It's not just for trivia. The thing is that prefixes like this are reused all the time in medical terminology and science. So exo means outside or outer. So what happens is you have some sort of secretion onto an epithelium. If you forgot what epithelium is, or if you're new to class, go to chapter 4. That is a type of tissue. So basically you're secreting it onto a sheet of cells, and you have a sheet of cells on your skin. You also have a sheet of cells lining your gastrointestinal tract running from your mouth to your anus. So for exocrine glands, it's secreting into your skin or your digestive tract. Now, endocrine, this is the star of our first section of the semester. So endo, well, what's the opposite of outside? It would be inside, right? Inside and inner. So whenever you see endo, you're referring to something that's inner to something. So endo is used like endoscope. You're looking at inside of something, right? So what happens is that endocrine, instead of secreting onto a surface and epithelium, you're having secretion into the bloodstream of your body. So it's not just secreting it anywhere, it's actually secreting it into the blood. So not only are you thinking hormones with the endocrine system, you should also be thinking about blood, because blood is the primary carrier of hormones. Okay, so hormone secretion. So basically, refers to how do you release these hormones into your body? How do you release them into your bloodstream? So again, cement this in your head. Blood is the primary carrier of hormones. Well, you can have hormones in other extracellular fluids, but blood is the one that is very important in terms of distributing it throughout the body. So this is the primary way you get it. It's like the main highway, the H1 of your body in terms of hormones. But where does blood go in your body? Everywhere, right? So blood goes everywhere in your body. So this is why hormones are very important and very potentially very powerful. Hormones can be distributed potentially to everywhere in your body. Now, does that mean every single hormone affects every single cell in your body? Well, that's something we might get to next lecture. But the thing is that, does every cell respond to every hormone? We'll find out soon. But the thing is that distribution-wise, hormones can potentially go anywhere in the body. But whether it actually has effect, it depends on something else. Now, mechanisms of intracellular communication. So this is endocrine communication. So it's primarily through the bloodstream. These are hormones. So when you think endocrine, think hormones, think bloodstream. Now, there are other mechanisms of intercellular communications like direct communication. Actually, this becomes very important when we get to the cardiovascular system and the heart. Very important for that. Paracrine communication, this is like para means to the side. So instead of like being broadcast potentially to everywhere, paracrine is more just to your neighbors. And then autocrine, auto means self, right? So what we have here is a cell secreting something and it's responding to the own stuff it secretes. And synaptic communication, that was last semester. That's what we spent almost over a third of last semester, right? Synaptic communication, the nervous system, this is where you find that. Now, hormones, glands, and targets. So hormones comes from the Greek word ormi, which means impetus or urge. So when you think of like, oh shoot, so like if you have like a preteen, like little brother or sister or a son or daughter or cousin, you think like, oh my god, they're going through that hormone surge. They have all these hormones raging, and that's just what makes them really impulsive. So that's another way you can think of it. These are chemical messages that impel these cells to respond. They cause some sort of urge of a cell to respond to a chemical. Now, a gland, this is a tissue, endocrine gland more specifically. These are tissues or organs that produce a hormone. So that's why we have that primary versus secondary. I mean, pretty much almost all the tissues in your body produce a hormone of some sort. So these are all endocrine glands. But is it their main function? That's what makes it primary versus secondary. And target organs. So you have something that makes the hormone, but where does the hormone end up? Where does it end up affecting? And that's what you call your target organ. So again, you have your gland producing the hormone, but when the hormone actually reaches a cell, tissue, or organ and causes an effect, that's the target. So that's something that's upon. So glands produce hormones, they reach target organs or tissues and cause effects.